In 1896, along the isolated creeks of Canada's Yukon territory, a handful of prospectors quietly pulled tiny, heavy flakes of gold from the freezing water. The Canadian government immediately moved to control the discovery. Officials restricted knowledge of the region, hoarding safe route maps and geographic data behind closed doors. This map shows the sheer scale of the interior, a vast topography where a wrong turn meant starvation. At the time, possessing precise navigational charts of these rivers and mountains meant holding the only survivable path to the goldfields. Accurate geographic data became the rarest commodity in North America. These classified maps were now perceived as literal blueprints to wealth, the most dangerous documents on the continent. The security of the maps broke down rapidly. Within months, copies of the restricted charts were stolen, copied, and sold into the public domain. Newspapers seized the leaked documents, exploding the story outward. They printed maps alongside headlines of instant riches, stripping away topographical warnings. By removing contour lines, the ink created a deadly illusion. A 3,000-mile wilderness expedition appeared as a straightforward stroll. The public response was absolute. Thousands liquidated their life savings, quit their jobs, and abandoned their families to chase the coordinates printed in their morning papers. The stolen map acted as a siren song. It triggered a mass hysteria that pulled tens of thousands toward a disaster that the ink on the page could not reveal. From the moment the stampeders left civilization, the illusion shattered against the hostile reality of the Canadian North. The sheer physical scale of the terrain dwarfed the lines they had memorized. Travelers faced an immediate environmental shock. Temperatures plummeted below -40 degrees Celsius, and mighty waterways quickly froze into impassable blocks of ice, paralyzing vessels. Traditional transport failed completely. Pack animals sank into drifts, sledges splintered on hidden rocks, and the elements assaulted thousands of unprepared stampeders wandering the trails. As progress slowed, desperate makeshift camps sprang up. Men huddled in thin canvas tents, watching their scarce supplies dwindle while exposed to lethal winds. The prospectors were now engaged in a desperate struggle against a terrain that the two-dimensional map had effectively erased. Look closely at the government survey. The route through the Chilkoot Pass is depicted as a thin red line, a simple border crossing on the way to the Yukon River. In reality, the base was a terrifying bottleneck. Tens of thousands arrived to find a near-vertical wall of ice and rock stretching into the clouds. To cross it, men were forced into an endless single-file march up an icy staircase cut directly into the mountain, carrying spine-crushing loads. To prevent mass starvation, Canadian authorities instituted a strict rule. No one could cross the border without a literal ton of goods, enough food and gear to survive an entire year. Hauling a ton of supplies required climbing the Chilkoot up to 40 times. The trail became littered with abandoned gear and men who froze to death long before they reached the goldfields. The Chilkoot Pass exposed the map's ultimate omission. It provided the location of the gold, but gave no indication of how to survive the trek. For the fraction of stampeders who survived the mountains, the journey ended at the sprawling boomtown of Dawson City. The sheer scale of the migration broke the region's economics. Over 100,000 people funneled into the Yukon, vying for a microscopic fraction of viable land. Because the map leaked early, government insiders and local traders had already claimed the profitable territory. The survivors reached the creeks to find a landscape already industrialized. Established crews used heavy sluice boxes and draft horses to extract the wealth, while the newcomers could only watch from the banks. Surviving the journey was only half the struggle. The widespread leak of the map had already weaponized the laws of supply and demand against the stampeders. The final ledger of the Klondike is grim. Of the 100,000 who attempted the journey, only a fraction ever found gold. The vast majority lost their savings, returning home bankrupt and physically broken. The rush stands as a historical monument to mass delusion. It serves as proof of how easily unchecked greed can overpower basic reason. The stolen map functioned as the bait for a sprawling, icy trap. The gold rush remains a final proof that the promise of instant wealth is more lethal than